let's look at Baruch Spinoza's organization of an aristocratic government, the organization he suggests. And I have to say this, maybe you've not watched my other videos. This is from chapter 8 of Political Treatise. So Baruch Spinoza does provide us with a detailed organization of what he thinks or how he thinks an aristocratic government should be organized so that it is more effective, efficient, and stable. And he says, that, of course, it is an aristocratic form of government, which means the people ruling are patricians. Now, the patricians, who he says could be 5,000 or more, depending on the number of the population, and initially, interestingly, they are elected by the multitude. But after the initial election, the subsequent elections are not done by the multitude. It is the patricians themselves who will elect new patricians when there is need. Maybe there is a vacancy in the council. Then it's them to elect new patricians, and this now goes indefinitely. There is no end to this. And in fact, from the start of the aristocracy, the multitude is ignored, basically. In fact, the words Baruch uses in some part of the chapter is that they basically become foreigners who are living in this dominion. Now in the government, there are the patricians. They are like the head of the dominion. It's the head of the dominion, but it's formed of many people who've come together. It's a council, basically. And he says these council functions include passing and repealing laws, and also electing other patricians, I've said this, and also appointing ministers who are in charge of the state affairs of the state. And they have the supreme authority. Basically, you can say this council has the power that you would say the monarch has, or they also have the power that a president has in most modern societies. And then he talks of the other category of people who form this government are the ministers. Now, the ministers are in charge of day-to-day affairs of the state, of course, making sure the government runs, things are done that are supposed to be done. And now these ministers are appointed from the commoners. Is that, yeah, I think he calls them commoners. Yeah, so these ministers are appointed from the multitude. They are not appointed from the patricians, and they are in charge of affairs of the state. I think in another part of the book, it does explain what the affairs of the state are, which is basically the day-to-day running of the government, what bureaucrats do, basically. So these people are in charge of the bureaucrats of the dominion. Now, we have the syndics. Now, the syndics is a smaller council that is formed from the patricians. A few patricians are elected by the other patricians to form this smaller council known as the syndic council. Now, Baruch Spinoza tells us that the duties of these syndics should be to see that the constitution, as far as it concerns the council and ministers of the dominion, be kept unbroken, and who should therefore have the authority to summon to judgment and in conformity with established law to condemn any. So basically, the syndics make sure that the law is followed by the government. That we can call it, you can say, for example, in the Commonwealth countries, they are called the Attorney General. He's he's the person who guides the government on making sure that the government follows the law or understands what it should do as far as the law is concerned. So this is what the syndics do, according to Baruch's suggestion. In an aristocratic government, they make sure that the patricians follow the law or do things the way they should be done according to the law. And they are also the people who organize or call the council to meetings. They are the ones to organize meetings that have to be organized so that the particular issues can be debated. And they are picked to serve for life. He does explain why that is important, because he says so that they are able to act in their office in a way that they don't expect something else after they are out of office. So he says once they are appointed, it should be for life. And they are the ones who are paid from what I described in another video as a census tax, which means the dominion or the council orders for every inhabitant of the dominion to give a coin, and these coins are then used to determine the number of people or the size of the population, and this money goes to pay the syndics. So I've said they summon the Supreme Council. They also propose matters that the Supreme Council should talk about or should discuss. They also have a president and a vice president, and these individuals hold office for short times, like maybe a year, and then other individuals are elected by the rest of the syndics to take that position. Could be the syndics or the patricians who do this, the larger council. He also says they are also of the syndics chosen by the Supreme. Some should sit. They also sit in the Senate. I'm going to talk about the Senate, but they don't vote. The syndics can sit in the Senate. Not all of them, some of them, but they don't vote. Now, of course, now we have the Senate, and the Senate is also another body and is formed of the patricians. Some patricians become the senators. And it says the second council and subordinate to the supreme one. It is the second council and subordinate to the supreme, the entire, aristocrat council. Its duty is to transact public business, for instance, publish the laws of the dominion, order the fortification of the cities, confer military commissions, impose taxes, answer foreign embassies, decide where embassies are to be sent. So those are some of the functions of the Senate. And Baruch says that the senators must be at least 50 years old for some reason. Maybe, in fact, it does mention a lot age when it comes to appointing people to these offices. And I guess it's more about they are more wiser, they know more than younger people. And their payment the payment of the senators comes from a tax that is imposed on export and imports. And Baruch gives the reason for that. He says because the Senate is the one to decide on war, using these tax to pay them incentivizes them to ignore war and prefer peace, so that they don't just go to war because they like war, but they go to war because it is really necessary. Because during war, then there is no business, which means there is no tax that can be used to pay them. Then there is the court of justice or bench. These are judges who are also patricians. They are elected or appointed by other patricians from the council, and they become judges. And their payment comes from whoever who loses a case before them, then pays. Part of the amount that they pay goes to pay these judges. It's also the same with the people who come for criminal cases and they are fined. The fine, then at least part of it goes to these judges. Now, these judges, the syndics that I mentioned earlier, according to Baruch, have the power to review the judgments of these judges, which is like a check and balance, as they call it, so that the judges don't basically go rogue because they want more money out of the rulings or the judgments they give. So the syndics can go and look at the judgments, and in fact, the multitude can appeal to the syndics when they are not satisfied with how the judges have ruled. Then there are the governors of cities and provinces who are also they are also senators, and they are also a patrician. So they are patrician, and at the same time they are senators. Then they are also appointed as governors of cities and provinces. Now there are secretaries. These are people who now serve in the councils, in the Senate, with the syndics, and or serve under the governor. They help the governor rule. These ones are not patricians. These are commoners. And he says they are commoners or commons who are appointed to serve in that office. Same case to treasurers. These are also commoners or commons, and they manage, of course, the finances of either the council, the Senate, the syndic, and all these other bodies. So that is basically the organization that Baruch gives us of what he thinks should be an effective aristocratic government. It has patricians, and these patricians basically now serve in all these other offices of the syndic, Senate, and court of justice, but they don't. The only offices where we have the commons is the ministers and also the treasurers and the secretaries.